second and third round?
He's picking them apart with just one hand. So I feel like he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. I thought he won still, and he wasn't even really getting hit like that. So I don't know. But it was the guy looking.
When I was a casual, I thought as a casual, I spoke like a casual, and I looked at boxing like a casual. But when I became a hardcore, I put away all those casual things. This is Michael Rogers, and welcome to BodyWorkBoxing. Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to BodyWorkBoxing. And before I really get into the words of the young phenom Jerron Boots Ennis, I want to first say that PBC, it often gets knocked for not having a fire card, and I believe that card was lit. That was a lit card. It was very diverse. It started off with King Tug and Lucas, which was a Mongolian and an African. And, that fight with Lucas having 10 days notice, it really looked like King Tug was going to end the night with either overhand right or a right uppercut. I mean, it looked like in them first couple rounds, he was just waiting and setting it up, but somehow Lucas became real scrappy. He found a way to survive and, not really get hit with it to the point to where it would put him out there, but in watching the fight, I thought that it was going to be an early night. That wound up going to a draw. It had a little controversy because there was a knockdown that didn't get counted in that round, and with it being a draw, had they count that knockdown, Lucas would have won. Even though overall, the way I scored the fight, I thought Tug did enough to actually win the fight. When you look at ring generalship, defense, effective aggression, and effective punching, I think that Tug had did enough to win. I was satisfied with a draw, wasn't mad at all. Then we move on to the Puerto Rican. It's Sabril Matias against Ananias, and he's Armenian. So you had a Puerto Rican versus an Armenian with ties to Russia. And that fight was, that was a good fight. They stayed in the pocket. It was a popular consensus that maybe Sabril Matias was not fighting the right fight. Maybe he should have used his length more, used his jab more, but he stood in the pocket. He was delivering some hellacious body shots. And it just came down to the point to where, at the end of the ninth, the close of the ninth, getting ready to go into the 10th round, the medics and everybody came by and checked out Ananias and was just like, no, he can't follow. And so the fight was over, right? So let's fast forward to the end of the night. Now going into this fight, it was a lot of controversy, man. My heart goes out to Mr. Gary Russell Jr. because of, the things he was enduring with his father. I pray that his father, his health continually and gradually gets better. I know it was pretty tough not having him in camp. Heard from Coach Calvin Ford about how different nuances in camp and how when different comfort zones are missed in the camp, it can show up in a fight. And, between the inactivity, almost 2-year layoff, for the longest reigning champ, I think he reigned, they said, for 6 years and 302 days. And his reign, truth be told, shouldn't have ended last night. But about last night, this is a term that I want to create. It's a term that I saw where they pretty much, I call it the silent treatment. And this is pretty much how you can always tell how they want a fight to go and how a fight is really going. And what they were doing was, whenever Magsayo would actually land on Gary, they would call and do the hoops and ahs, but they were not saying anything many of the times when Mr. Gary Russell Jr. was landing. And I scored the fight. I actually had the fight. I had Magsayo winning the first, the 10th, and the 11th, and you could have gave him the 6th. So at tops, it would have been 8-4 in my book. tops. I mean, it was like they were just clamoring to just always give, credit to MarkMagsayo for everything he did. Now, he did catch Gary. I mean, he caught Gary pretty flush, but Gary is a master at the point system and understanding how it works, and he realized that, hey, he just caught me clean, so I got to catch him 2 or 3 more times, and that's exactly what was happening. He was catching Gary, but when you look at the defense, who had the better defense? Clearly, Gary hurt his arm in the 3rd round. Clearly, Gary had the better defense. With one arm, you can visually tell, and MarkMagsayo knew that Gary only had one arm. So ring generalship. But I believe that they were using that since MarkMagsayo was actually the one pressuring Gary. They was, leaning towards ring generalship. That wasn't ring generalship. Gary was out there looking like he was out there fencing with one arm. I mean, he was pivoting, he was turning him. He made MarkMagsayo run into the rope so many times. He was hitting him with a check left hook. He was hitting him with a left 3 times, a left downstairs, up to the head. So ring generalship, effective aggression. Who was more effective with their aggression? Maybe it depends on how you see the fight. It depends on how you see the fight. It looked like early on MarkMagsayo was really waiting to counter Gary. That's what he was really relying on. And then at times he brought forward pressure and he was landing on Gary, but it was not effective. And again, everything he met with, he was met back with 2 or 3 punches. And this is the first time where I'm honestly gonna say, man, I don't really trust that CompuBox number. I don't trust the CompuBox. So we had ring generalship, defense, effective aggression, and effective punches. Clean or effective punches. I think Gary landed the clean or effective punches. He buckled and caught. Not saying he did not get caught. Yes, he did. But he caught and froze MarkMagsayo several times in that fight. And excuse me. I believe that I'm not going to say the R word, but like Gary said, when he wanted to hear from some of the fans, I'm one of the fans that say that because my theory is this: when it comes to the champ, you have to go and take the belt from the champ. You have to impose your will and take it. With Gary having one arm, and for Gary to do what he was able to do from the 3rd round all the way to the end of the fight, he did not take the belt from the champion. So by definition, or in theory, that's the way it typically works. When you have a fight going on and it's a champ versus a contender, you have to go and beat the champ up. And I don't think that MarkMagsayo did it. It's clear that they gave Gary Russell the silent treatment where they wasn't calling even the highlights. They were showing all the highlights of when MarkMagsayo, and this is how you know when things may not be all where they should be. I'm gonna put it like that. But I'm not gonna use the R word, but I will say I have not felt like this since I saw the Valdez Consacao fight, in which they were calling everything that Valdez did. They were talking about things about Consacao that wasn't necessarily happening as far as body language and this and this and that. And I think even a couple times in this fight, Abner Mara was like, well, to be honest, Mark missed a lot of those shots. And when they went to go show a highlight, when they in that round, when they said that MarkMagsayo had landed to the body, they went back and showed the highlight, and you can clearly see that Gary actually blocked that punch with his elbow. And the commentator said, well, you hear just when he landed that bot, well, he didn't quite land it was actually blocked, but he was going to the body, and they did that. So I'm not going to say the R word. I am going to say the card was lit, so PBC does get an A for the actual card. I think that it was a very diverse card. I think that you definitely got the entertainment value out of it. I just think that the climax wasn't what it should have been, and I think Mr. Gary Russell did enough to actually retain his crown. However, However, he's a soldier. I'm sure, like he said, he's gonna get his arm fixed. You know, he's gonna endure whatever, and he's gonna claw back to the top. But he has nothing to hang his hat. He has nothing to hang his head down for. He fought a great fight. You know, we all look forward, and we all pulling for Mr. Gary Russell. We looking for Mr. Gary Antoine and Mr. Gary Antonio going forward. Otherwise, I want to say all subscribers matters. Thank you for the growth this week. That's about it on the fights. I just wanted to keep it clean and simple and give my synopsis. I'm not going to be all salacious and, you know, go into all the theories and all this. But here you had Boots, who basically said, I don't know what the judges were watching. I don't know what fight. He dominated the fight with one arm. And Boots himself said he won. I was going to play Bozy as well. Bozy said it was clear that Gary won as well, and they were actually at the fight. Two gentlemen that know a lot about boxing purists, don't have anything to gain really from actually stating the truth from what they saw. So here you had people in the ring, and Boots and Bozy, who said what they said about the fight. You have myself, who watched the fight, you know, at home on Showtime, and then you have what the judges and what the announcers were actually calling. It just goes to show that you cannot leave it up to the judges' hands. And it's something that Mr. Devin Haney needs to think about, because this happened right here on American soil. And if you go see Kambosos, man, I can only imagine, man, he might get the silent treatment. So you got to sharpen that iron, man, and be ready to go into that fire. That's it, that's all. Body work!
All right, I believe you. But my Tommy gun don't. Get down on your knees and tell me you love me.
My word, and I do what I do. He knows what I'm about to tell him right now. It's Mr. Keep running your mouth. That's what I do.
I just feel like I'm the champ, and at the end of the day, I'm just a fighting motherfucker. It doesn't matter. Inside, outside, I can just fight. So I just feel like if it gets down to the wire, and we gotta lock it up, I'm out on top.
Hey, look, as you can see how I'm looking, I stay solid. I'm always solid. I stay fuck solid up, man. You know what I'm saying? To the fans and all that.
You jump outside the ring. I'm a fighter. Like I said before, ain't no safety on the clock, so